CosmosCli is a command line tool which allows you to update data inside of your Cosmos DB for NoSQL. And it does this in three distinct steps. So the first step is to query or select data out of your container. Then the next step is to transform it using another command line tool called JQ. And then the third step is to take that transformed data and push it back into your container using the upsert item command. So to demonstrate how this works, first we'll install the command line tool. So we'll use .NET tool install -g for global CosmosCli. I'll also install JQ. So in my case, I'm using Ubuntu, so I'm going to use apt install JQ. You can check the documentation on JQ's website for how to install it in your operating system. And then to get started here, we'll use the Cosmos tool here. So it's just called Cosmos. We're operating at the container level and we're doing select item. And this is the query we're running, select value count 1 from P. So this will give us the number of items in our container. And so in this case, it's 263. And let me jump over to the portal. So just to show you, I have a Cosmos DB account. And inside of that account, I have a database called Cosmic Works. And inside of that database, I have a container called products. Here's some sample data, some product data that we're going to use. So what you might be wondering is, how did it know how to connect to that particular database? So inside of this directory, I have a config.json. So if we take a look at this file, and I'm going to use the X version, which just has my key hidden so that I'm not showing it to you. So you can see it just specifies the endpoint, the key, the database, and the container. You can also specify each of these different attributes as arguments in the command line. But to make things simpler, we'll use this config.json file. So in order to get the actual items, we can do select star from P. And this will display a list of items. So by default, it does a page which is like 100 items. We may not want that. So we can use the -n and specify that we only want 3 items in this case. I can also suppress some of the system generated fields here. And so this will give us the first 3 items. I'm just going to pipe this to a file. No, not pipe it, but use this pipe. And then we'll take that file and we'll pipe it to JQ. So here's our JQ command. So by default, it'll just print it, which is kind of nice. But what we might want to do is add another property. So I'm going to add, using the map function, a tax property. And we'll just hard code it to 0.07 for 7% tax. If we run that, we can see that that has been added to our 3 items. Now, of course, that doesn't update the file, that doesn't update the database. In order to update our database, we'll call our first command again. So here's our select item, only get the first 3, select star from P, pipe that to JQ, doing our map, adding in our tax, and then piping that to the upsert item, which you do need to specify the partition key. So in this case, we have a partition key, so -p category ID. And with that, when we run this, altogether will update our database. So here is the results of our upsert command, which is just updating the first 3 items. Now you might want to update all the items. So it's probably not a good idea to just select all of the items, 263, we could have specified that as the n, but we might not want to do that. What we might want to do is use a continuation token. So in this case, what I'm doing, we're doing our select item again. In this case, I'm doing n of 90, so the first 90. I'm specifying a token, so that's what the -t is, of continuation token.text. So you just have to give it some file name. And what this will do is it will run this the first time, save the continuation token into the file. And so when we run it a second time, it will pick up where it left off. So the first run did the first 90, the second run will run the next 90, and it will do that until it gets to the end of the items that it's querying. And in that case, it will create an empty or save nothing into the file. So there is no more continuation tokens, and our loop will exit and we will be done. So I can take this, paste it into here. And you can play around with numbers, like maybe you want to do 100 at a time, or maybe you have some very big documents, so you might want to only do like 2 at a time, or 5 at a time, or 10 at a time. So you can kind of play with those numbers to do different batch sizes to try to make things faster or get you around some RU problems if that occurs. I didn't hit enter, so we're sitting here waiting. You should see the first 90, second 90, and the third, and we're done. So we've now added this text to each of the items. So if we go back to our portal, we click on an item, we should see our text property added to it, to each of these items. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how you can use this tool to update items inside of your containers. Thank you.